Hello everyone, this time we're continuing with the series where I cover something a little bit different. On the morning of Monday 21st of September 1953, a North Korean MiG-15 pilot was taking off from Sunan Air Base just outside Pyongyang. It was quite unusual for a North Korean pilot to take off alone, but this pilot was on no ordinary mission. Welcome to Curious Aviation Tales. Before we take a look at what followed, it's a good idea to take a look at the events leading up to this moment. Since first appearing above the skies of Korea in 1950, the MiG-15 had been a constant cause of concern to the US and UN allies. Having last encountered sometimes rather backward Soviet military technology in World War II, the Western allies assumed that the Soviet Union was still trailing behind them by a matter of years technologically. During the initial stages of the air conflict, the UN fielded late World War II aircraft in tandem with first-generation straight-wing jets. Unwilling to take the risk that the embryonic communist states of the People's Republic of China and North Korea could lose the war, the Soviet Union began to take an active but secret role. By the end of May 1950, Soviet pilots flying MiG-15s had already downed several Taiwanese aircraft over Shanghai. In November of that year, the Soviet 50th Fighter Aviation Division were deployed to Manchuria on the Chinese side of the Korean border. Alongside training Chinese and North Korean pilots in the use of the MiG-15, the Soviet pilots also engaged in combat, albeit with strict conditions such as never to overfly enemy territory or allow themselves to be captured. The effect of the arrival of experienced battle-hardened Soviet pilots, many of whom have cut their teeth against the Germans and Japanese in World War II, coupled with state-of-the-art technology in the form of the MiG-15, initially had a devastating effect on the UN Air Coalition. Of course, during this time the UN could only speculate on the presence of Soviet pilots, as all of the MiG-15s carried North Korean markings. The balance only began to be redressed when the US rushed their newly equipped F-86 squadrons to the Far Eastern Theatre in December of that year. Although they were a relatively even match and the outcome of combat came down to the individual skill sets and tactics employed by the pilots involved, the US were nevertheless anxious to get their hands on a functioning MiG-15. To that end, on the 1st of April, coincidentally 1953, Operation Moolah was launched. The plan offered $50,000, that's $500,000 today, to any communist pilot who delivered a fully operational MiG-15 to South Korea. An additional bounty of $50,000 was set aside for the first pilot to do this. Furthermore, defecting communist pilots were offered political asylum and resettlement in a non-communist country. On the night of April 26, 1953, just as the armistice talks began, leaflets were dropped on communist bases and radio broadcasts were made in Mandarin, Cantonese, Russian and Korean detailing the offer to the communist pilots. The plan was designed to have a twofold effect. Firstly, to sow the seed of mistrust among the communist air forces, and secondly, if there was a communist pilot with a set of brass bollocks between his legs, the Americans could get themselves a MiG-15. It appears the first part of the plan worked rather well, as communist air forces were grounded for much of the following week. And if subsequent reports are credible, apparently the top brass of the air forces became as paranoid as a schizophrenic on a weed binge. However, the stated aims of the plan, the acquisition of a MiG-15 and communist pilot defectors, did not seem to be as forthcoming. That was all about to change on September 21st, when the previously mentioned North Korean pilot took off from Sunan. The North Korean pilot named No Kum Sok, yes, that's his name, not the reason for defection because he heard the Americans were issued with tissues and hand lotion. Make up your own jokes in the comments section, please. Anyway, Senior Lieutenant No was aided in his journey by an almost unbelievable set of coincidences. First off, having previously been suspected by superiors of being unreliable, he was still allowed to fly. Then on the morning he decided to leave Kim Il-sung a big "so long and thanks for all the MiGs" letter, he was neither noticed as he took off nor pursued as he left North Korean airspace. His third stroke of luck occurred as he approached Kimpo Air Base near Seoul in South Korea. The radar on the airbase was down for maintenance that morning, so his approach went unnoticed. Additionally, there was an F-86 patrolling the approach to the airbase, and he would have been shot down if sighted. However, he approached from the wrong end, which would have led to the additional complication of landing with a tailwind. And if that wasn't enough good luck for anybody in one morning, during his rollout he narrowly missed striking an F-86 that was getting ready to take off. Lieutenant No then parked his aircraft between two F-86, climbed out and began tearing up a picture of Kim Il-sung that was placed in the cockpits of all North Korean aircraft. During his debriefing, US authorities realised that No had never heard of the offer for an intact MiG. He also stated that the offer of a good job and a life in the US would have been much more enticing to communist pilots, as they had no idea of the value of US currency. No subsequently moved to the US, changed his name to Kenneth Rowe, and studied aeronautical engineering. He worked for a number of US aeronautical giants, including Grumman and Lockheed. In the year 2000, he eventually retired from his post as Professor of Aeronautical Engineering at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Florida. He's now 86 years old and lives in Daytona Beach, Florida. As always, I thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to dislike or tell me to go fuck myself below.